I'm a queen and queens don't marry men like him, she said about me after her father asked about marriage at a family dinner. I smiled, wished her well, and walked away. Now her king has cheated on her with her best friend and she's desperately texting me. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. It wasn't a sudden thing. The change in Sarah, it was more like watching a statue being slowly eroded by the wind. Tiny pieces flaking away until the person you once knew was just a different shape. For 5 years, I was the one who saw her through grad school, through 3 dead-end jobs, and through the family drama she said ruined her Christmas every single year. I was the reliable one, the stable one, the guy who'd bring her coffee every morning before her lecture, who'd sit with her in the car for hours just so she could vent, and who never once complained about being the plus one at all. Her events? I didn't mind being the quiet one in the corner because I genuinely believed she was a good person underneath all the noise. My friends told me I was too generous, that I was letting her walk all over me. I always just told them they didn't get it. They didn't see the woman who'd cry on my shoulder after a bad day or who'd hold my hand under the table when she was nervous. Things really started to change when she got her new job in marketing. It wasn't a huge promotion, but it came with a new social circle and, more importantly, a new boss, a guy named David. She talked about him constantly. At first, it was just David said this or David thinks that. Soon it became David would never have let that happen. And David is on a completely different level. I started to feel less like her partner and more like a permanent fixture in her background. My job was a steady one in logistics, something I'd built from the ground up and was proud of. It gave me the freedom to work from home most days and allowed me to provide for us without stress. For her, though, it was a problem. She started calling it unambitious and safe. Alex, you have to get out of that job, she said to me one night, scrolling through her phone. It's just a little boring. My co-workers are all talking about investing in crypto and starting their own companies. It's a different world. I tried to tell her that I liked my job, that it provided a great life for us, but she just waved her hand dismissively. Yeah, I know. It's fine. It's just not great. I swallowed the comment and let it go. I had a long history of letting her little digs go. I chalked it up to stress or her big personality. The last 6 months, she'd been distant. We'd stopped having quiet dinners at home and started going to loud, crowded restaurants with her new friends. She'd get bored, easily pulling out her phone and just disappearing into her new social media world, her face lit up by the screen. I'd sit there sipping my drink, feeling like a stranger. Then came the dinner. It was at her parents' house, a big formal event. Her entire extended family was there, including her judgmental aunt and her 2 smug cousins. Sarah was in her element holding cord at the center of the table, talking loudly about David and her new work family. I sat there politely nodding along, waiting for a chance to get a word in. I kept thinking of all the times I had driven her to this house for holidays, all the times I had spent hours helping her parents with their yard work, all the times I had been there for her when she was at her lowest. It felt like none of it mattered. At one point, her dad, a kind man who had always liked me, made an offhand comment. So, when are you two going to tie the knot? Alex is a good man. He'll make a great husband. The table went quiet. Sarah's eyes, which had been sparkling with all her new ambition, went cold. She looked at me then, back at her dad, a small knowing smirk on her lips. It was a look I'd never seen before. Smug, condescending, and just a little bit cruel. "Oh, Dad," she said, her voice dripping with an almost theatrical pity. She then looked directly at me as if I were a child. "Look, Alex is a good person. He's sweet and he's safe, but he's not what I need." She turned to her family, a grand gesture of a confident woman telling a simple truth. Her voice was loud and clear, carrying across the entire table. The truth is, my life is on a different trajectory now. I'm a queen, and queens don't marry men like him. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her at the smirk I now recognized as a mask and felt nothing. The rage I thought would come never did. It was just a hollow, quiet calm, like the moment after a storm passes and the air goes still. I slowly pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor, a sound that cut through the silence she had created. The entire table was staring. They were waiting for me to break, to scream, to cry, to prove her right. I stood up, looked her in the eye, and gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. A final acknowledgement of the person she once was. "Then I hope you find your king," I said, my voice low and steady. I didn't raise it. I didn't need to. Every person at the table heard me. I gave her one last look of complete and utter finality, then turned and walked out of the room. I didn't rush. I walked at a normal measured pace, grabbing my coat from the front hall closet. As I opened the door to leave, I heard her voice behind me. "Alex, wait." It was a mix of shock and a fleeting moment of panic. She expected me to crumble, not to just leave. I didn't look back. I just walked out into the cool night air and closed the door behind me. The silence was deafening. I got into my car and drove away without a destination in mind. I just drove. The streets were a blur of yellow and white lights. Every mile put more distance between me and the person I thought I knew. I had spent so much of my time trying to make her happy, trying to be the kind of man she wanted, that I had lost track of who I was. And In a single cruel moment, she had handed me back a piece of myself, the part that had dignity. When I got back to the apartment, it was already so cold and empty. All of her things were still there. Her shoes by the door, the book she'd been reading on the nightstand, her coffee mug on the counter. It all felt like an exhibit in a museum dedicated to a dead relationship. I didn't touch anything. I went to the bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the back of the closet and started packing. I was a strange, almost meditative process. I packed my clothes, my books, my laptop, and my few personal belongings. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just methodically put my life into a bag. I left everything else. The furniture, the kitchen stuff, the television. It was all hers now. As I zipped up the suitcase, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Are you serious? You're just leaving?" I didn't reply. I didn't even open the message. I wasn't angry. I was just done. I went to my home office, found a blank sheet of paper, and wrote a single line. "I've moved out. The keys are under the welcome mat. I hope you find what you're looking for." I folded the note, placed it on the kitchen counter, and picked up my bag. I grabbed my car, keys, walked out of the apartment for the last time, and locked the door. I put the keys under the mat, just like the note said. Then I got in my car and drove away. My phone buzzed in my pocket again and again. Her calls, a text from her cousin, another from her best friend, who was also one of our mutual friends. I didn't look at any of them. I just drove until I was far away, until I found a motel on the side of a highway. For the next few weeks, I went radio silent. I didn't block anyone. I didn't make a big announcement. I simply disappeared. I changed my routine, stopped going to the coffee shop we used to frequent, and spent my weekends alone just working and thinking. The silence was unnerving at first, but it quickly became my shield, a barrier protecting me from her and the life I had left behind. A few months went by. The world kept turning just as it had before. Sarah and I met. My world, once centered on her orbit, began to spin on its own axis again. My apartment, now filled with my own things, felt less like a temporary space and more like a home. The loneliness was still there sometimes, but it was a quiet, manageable ache, not the searing pain it had been. I was working long hours on the logistics software. I'd been conceptualizing, pouring all my energy and focus into it. It was a good distraction, a healthy outlet for all the chaos that had been simmering inside me. And then one day, the narrative changed. It was late on a Tuesday night. I was at my desk deep in code when my phone buzzed with a message from my old friend Mark. Mark was the one who had always told me I was too good to her. The one who had always kept a healthy distance from our relationship's drama. I rarely heard from him outside of a quick text. So, the notification caught my attention. The message was just a link to a private social media post with a single word. "Dude." I clicked on it. It was a long, rambling post from Sarah's best friend Jess, the same Jess who had been at the family dinner and was one of our mutual friends. The post was a scorched earth rant, a tirade about betrayal and backstabbing. I read the words and they hit me like a ton of bricks. Jess had found out that David, the king, had been sleeping with her not just once, but for months. He had been manipulating both of them, telling Jess that his relationship with Sarah was on the rocks and that he would leave her soon. The post detailed how he had used Jess for emotional support, all while publicly parading his relationship with Sarah. He was not a king. He was a con artist. The post didn't stop there. Jess revealed that David had been using his business connections to impress both of them. He had a flashy car, but it was a lease. His trips were all paid for by his father's company, a company he had been trying to get a job with and failing miserably. He was a fraud. And Sarah, who had prided herself on being so discerning and ambitious, had fallen for his entire act. But the most damning part was the final paragraph. Jess wrote about how David had laughed at Sarah, mocking her behind her back and calling her a stepping stone and a temporary fling. He said that Sarah was so desperate for a taste of the good life that she would believe anything he told her. He told Jess that Sarah was a trophy for the moment, but that she was getting too clingy and he was ready to move on. As I read the words, a strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't triumph. Not exactly. It was a kind of vindication, so complete, so profound, that it almost felt unreal. All the things she had said about my life being small, about me being unambitious and safe, were all the very things she had been tricked into giving up. She had discarded me for a mirage, a man who was nothing but a cheap imitation of the success she craved. The next morning, the post was gone, but the damage had already been done. Other people had seen it, and the rumor mill was churning. I started getting texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years. "Did you hear about Sarah? I'm so sorry, dude. I always knew he was a jerk." I just wrote back, "It's all good. I'm just focused on my work," and left it at that. I wasn't going to gloat. The irony of the situation was its own reward. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of poetic justice. After all, the queen, who had discarded me for her king, had been betrayed by him in the most public and humiliating way possible. Her kingdom was burning, and I was just quietly watching the smoke from a safe distance. The first few weeks after the post went viral were quiet. I figured she was too humiliated to reach out, but a few weeks turned into a month, and then another. The dam, it seemed, was finally breaking. It started with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's me, Sarah." I didn't reply. I just deleted the message and went back to my work. My mind didn't even register a spike in frustration or anger. It was just a weird piece of spam, a ghost from a past life. A few days later, a text came from the same number, but this time it was a little more frantic. "I know you're probably mad. I just want to talk. Please." Still nothing. The power of silence was astonishing. The less I gave her, the more she seemed to want it. Then the messages started escalating. She started sending long rambling paragraphs about how sorry she was, how she made a mistake, how David wasn't what she thought he was. She tried to rewrite history, portraying our breakup as a mutual thing, a misunderstanding, something we both needed to grow from. I could practically hear her voice in the text spinning the narrative to make herself look like a victim, not the architect of her own destruction. But the worst part wasn't the text, it was the calls. She started calling from blocked numbers. My phone would ring and I would see unknown caller flash across the screen. I knew it was her, so I just let it go to voicemail. After the 5th call, I started listening to the voicemails. At first, it was just her crying, sniffling, and saying my name. Then the desperation turned to anger. "Why won't you just answer me?" She'd scream into the phone. I'm trying to apologize. Why are you being like this?" Her desperation soon turned to manipulation. She started contacting people I cared about. My mum called me one afternoon. "Alex," she said, her voice hesitant. "I just got a call from Sarah. She said she's really sorry and she wants to know why you won't talk to her." I told my mum the brief version of what happened. She was furious both at Sarah and at herself for even taking the call. I told her that what she did was unforgivable and that she needs to leave you alone, my mum said. "Don't you worry about it, honey. She won't be calling me again." Next came a text from my best friend. "Sarah just slid into my DMs asking for your number. Said she's worried about you and just wants to know you're okay." I sent her a gift of a ghost. He wasn't as polite as my mum and I loved him for it. Her attempts became a relentless, pathetic assault on my peace. She was a queen without a kingdom and she was doing everything she could to get back into the one she so carelessly discarded. But my walls were up and my silence was fortified with the knowledge that she was irrelevant to my happiness. My life was finally my own, and there was no room for her. The truth was, she was no longer a person to me. She was a cautionary tale. Months turned into a year. The logistics software I had been working on was a massive success. I had sold the initial prototype to a large company and was now a co-founder of my own startup. I had a new apartment, a new group of friends, and most importantly, a peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. The final encounter happened at a mutual friend's wedding. It was a beautiful sun-drenched day, and I was in my element talking and laughing with old friends. I was happy, genuinely, authentically happy. Then I saw her. She was standing alone by the buffet table, clutching a small plate of appetizers, looking around the room like she was searching for someone. She saw me, and her eyes went wide. She started walking toward me, a desperate, determined look on her face. "Alex," she said, her voice hushed. She was wearing a dress that looked expensive, but it seemed to swallow her. Her hair wasn't as polished. Her face looked tired. The queen was no longer, she was just Sarah. I just stood there waiting. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. "I can't believe it's you," she said, trying to force a laugh. "You look so good. So successful." She gestured around the room. "I've heard about what you're doing. It's amazing." I gave her a small polite nod. "Thanks." "I have to talk to you," she said, lowering her voice. "I'm so sorry, Alex, about everything. What I said at the dinner, it was a mistake. David, he wasn't who I thought he was. He cheated on me with Jess." She delivered the last part with a fragile bravado as if revealing a shocking secret I was unaware of. I just looked at her. I wasn't going to give her the sympathy she so desperately craved. "I know." Her face fell. She was expecting a reaction, a moment of shared pain, anything to reconnect with the old me. "You know how... It's not my business," I said, my voice calm. "Your life is your business, Sarah." She tried to take my hand, but I gently pulled it back. "I've been trying to call you. I know you're mad and you have every right to be, but can we please talk about this? I think we can get back to how things were. What we had was real, Alex. I miss you. I miss us." She was desperately trying to rewrite history to make her cruel public betrayal a simple mistake. The old me would have listened. The old me would have felt sorry for her. The new me just saw a tired woman standing in her own wreckage. "We can't," I said, my voice firm. "We're not the same people we were. You said at a dinner in front of your family that you were a queen and that queens don't marry men like me. I just believed you. I'm glad you found that out about yourself." The words hung in the air. Her eyes welled up with tears, not of true sorrow, but of frustrated, pathetic rage. "You're not going to even give me a chance after everything. I gave you 5 years of chances." I said, a faint smile on my face. "I gave you 5 years of my life. You didn't want it. You wanted a king. You wanted a different trajectory, a life on a different level. You wanted a man who makes things happen, not one who just waits for them to happen. Well, here I am, Sarah. I'm a co-founder of my own company. I'm building something. I am a man who makes things happen. I'm building a great life for myself. It's just not for you. I didn't wait for her response. I simply turned and walked away back toward the celebration. I was in a different place, a different life. She was a footnote in my past, a lesson learned. The queen who discarded her good man for a king was now alone, begging for a space in a kingdom she had already destroyed. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.